Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Ad America TV. Hi, I'm Maya Turner. I'm one of the guides here at Ad America, and we welcome our audience joining us online. We truly hope that you are doing well and staying safe amidst this outbreak. Well, anyway, for those of you who are first-timers here, hi, welcome to Ad America TV for the first time. Ad America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young generations of Indonesia to learn more about the United States. We have temporarily moved to a solely digital platform so you can enjoy our program from the comfort of your own home and help fund the curve of COVID-19. Don't forget to leave your questions in the comment box below, and our panelists will answer them later in the seminar. And for our friends here who are joining us through Zoom, there are a couple of features that you can use to actively participate in the seminar. You can use the raise hand section to ask your questions with your video on, or you can also use the chat box section whenever you wanted to say hi to the other participant and also the panelist as well. But please keep in mind to use these features wisely. All right? Cool. Now today we will be having a session titled Knowledge at America, Women in Small and Medium Enterprises Against All Odds. A friendly reminder for all of you, as continuation of our 10th anniversary celebration and a month of togetherness in May, we are giving a special giveaway. And how do you participate? You can participate by posting a picture of you with your family or friends in your social media account, and post it on your social media account, and don't forget to tag our social media account at AT America. And I'm gonna break the ice a little bit with our social media quiz. So our question of the day is it true or false that Virginia Rometty was the first female CEO to head IBM? I will repeat the question one more time. Listen carefully. Is it true or false that Virginia Rometty was the first female CEO to head the IBM? Stay tuned till the end of this event to find out if you got the answers right. And now, without further ado, please welcome our moderator for today, Mbak Ika Hamdan, SME Business Owner and Financial Advisor.
All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is staying safe, healthy, and happy with your family for today. And it's actually a very good opportunity for us, and also a proud moment for me to meet all of you guys. And I would say it's fellow women entrepreneur or independent women, as we are today is going to discuss about the Indonesia women entrepreneur in the SME, between the challenges as well as the opportunities that we have in the global economy. So for today, our speakers, we have two speakers that is will be very good in bringing us to the world, and also with some local knowledge as well as experience that will bring us into the opportunity as a women, especially right in our business world today. So the first speakers is Dr. Shaianne Osterreich. I may call her Mbak Shaianne. Hi, Mbak Shaianne.
Halo, selamat malam.
Selamat malam. Hi. Yes, Mbak Shaianne will be our first speaker for today, and she is an economic professor at Capita College since the years of 2000, and teach and research focus on globalization, poverty alleviation, gender, as well as well-being. And also, Mbak Shaianne is a Fulbright scholar that did her research in Indonesia, so quite good in using the bahasa campur-campur, Mbak Shaianne, sedikit-sedikit. And in the recent years, Mbak Shaianne is also doing the research that focus on manufacturing and the ILO's decent work framework. So today, I think Mbak Shaianne will bring us to the topic about the women in the workforce, as well as the challenges, dilemmas, and also probably drama, right, that we can overcome for the women. And our second speaker is Mbak Hendriana Werdhaningsih. Can I call you Mbak Hen, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes. Mbak Henne is a senior lecturer in Paramadina University in Jakarta, where Mbak Henne teaches product design and creative thinking. So this is very interesting because Mbak Henne's interest is in culture, gender, design thinking, and small-scale industry. That is also shown in Mbak Henne's most recent research and publication. Currently, Mbak Henne is pursuing a PhD in design at the Illinois Institute of Technology. And Mbak Henne is also focusing on the craft, maker space, and future manufacturing for a small, medium enterprise. So today, Mbak Henne will bring us to the challenge and opportunities for women in the craft production as well as business, so that SME bisa naik kelas di Indonesia. Correct? Without further ado, I think let's start with the first speaker, Mbak Shaianne. You will have about 25 to 30 minutes for your first presentation, and then after that, we can continue with Mbak Henne. Mbak Shaianne, the time is yours.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Very good, Mbak Shaianne.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with this community. I was very excited and honored to be asked. And I just want to say thank you to Ika for the introduction. I lived in Indonesia in 2006, which seems like a very, very long time ago right now. But I returned many times since then for research and to meet with friends. Unfortunately, I haven't been back in a few years now since I had my own son, and also, of course, with the coronavirus. So I hope everybody out there is doing well and staying safe, and we will get through this soon. So this presentation I'm going to make today comes out of my research that I have been doing for many years on women in manufacturing in Indonesia. And as you can see in this picture, this is a woman who is actually working at a Samsung factory in a factory located nearby to Jakarta. And so this is a very large factory, and it is highly connected to the global economy. But what I learned while doing research recently in the last several years is that there is a long supply chain in Indonesia, as is the case with other countries, especially in Asia, that sort of connect tiny little firms to big firms like this one. So this presentation is a little bit more about what it's like in these tiny versions of manufacturing firms, and for women's choices in terms of thinking about, should they be an employee or should they be an employer? What is going to work out better for them? So my overall goals here is pretty general, to consider the relationship between economic empowerment and work, and also to share some insights on the dilemma for low-income Indonesian and American women in the employee versus small business employer dilemmas. What is it that makes a low-income woman choose one or the other? What are some of the social and economic conditions, and also the effects of those decisions? We really also are going to spend a little time thinking about how social norms affect women's options and their responsibilities. And lastly, I want to introduce you to a concept that you may not know, which is called the contributing family worker. In official statistics, this category, it sounds sort of pleasant and familial, but what it means is a person who's working for zero pay in their family business, which is much more common for women than it is for men. So we'll talk about these things. I want to give you a sense of sort of my overall perspective when I think about poverty alleviation, both in the United States and in Indonesia. And where sometimes we think about poverty pretty much exclusively from the perspective of not having enough money. But money, on the one hand, we know that money can't buy you everything. And on the other hand, we know that money is important for accessing various types of resources. But we have to think about what is it that we actually want for a person or for a family when we want to move them away from being in a scenario where there's a lot of poverty. And one of the things we want to think about is, do they have access to freedoms and equity and distribution? And by freedoms, I mean some of the freedoms to choose to live a life that they might value. And so sometimes poor women can be in a real double bind here. Some of the social norms for women in most countries in the world can really constrain their choices. And then if you combine that with being poor, there can be some big issues. So I just want to sort of provide this context that it's very common now to think about poverty from the perspective of equity and freedom and health and education, and not just about how much money people have, but we don't want to also lose the fact that money is important. As Mbak mentioned, I'm very interested in the ILO's concept of decent work. And I just want to bring this here to you to think about our general goals for when we talk about, and this work, when we say work here, this could include being an employee or being an employer. So even in your scenario of being a very small business employer or entrepreneur, you still want to be able to sort of achieve these things, whether you're an employer or an employee. And so, traditionally, we think about work as a way to get wages. And so if wages are better, and in particular in Indonesia, are people doing better than they would be if they were living in a sort of agricultural setting? But fundamentally, it's kind of a low bar. So we want to think about better, higher bar. And some of the higher bar characteristics is the scenario dignified and equitable? Are you earning enough to sufficiently pay for yourself and for your family? Do you have access to health care? And for women in particular, is your work going to afford you the ability to have real rights to land ownership, to engaging in unionization, to be protected from discrimination or harassment? And lastly, this choose to work where you are working. And this is a real big issue for women, again, not just in Indonesia, but in the United States as well. Women in this double bind sometimes don't have as much choice as we would like. So we want to think about work in this kind of way. So this is a slide to give you some perspective on poverty in the United States. And so I'm mostly going to be looking and talking about the sort of double bind for women who are at or near being in poverty, as defined by these sort of generic numbers, but generic income numbers. But the thing I just want to highlight here is the light bar is for men and the darker bar is for women. And the United States, we have these different ethnic groups, racial and ethnic groups. And you can see that for white women, they are more likely to be poor than white men. And then also, with the exception of our Asian American community, all other non-white communities, well, actually, even the Asian American community has higher poverty rates. So there's also, we want to keep in mind that in addition to, your gender and economic situation, there are often ethnic or racial or geographical factors that really have a big effect on your access to work or to entrepreneurial capability or to the assets that you need to have in order to engage in, some small business work. And so even though in Indonesia, we do not have these same ethnic categories. Obviously, this is only one small view, and this is not about poverty, but this is what's called GDP per capita, which is basically just a measure of household income. And you can see that across the archipelago of Indonesia, there's quite a variation. So the darker numbers are roughly families where individuals are likely to have access to 171 million rupiah, as opposed to the very far light categories, light geographical areas, light homes and villages and living spaces where there is a lot of variation, and families are much more likely to, for the whole year, have access to closer to 42 million rupiah. So there's a huge divide. And so just using this as an example of how geography or ethnic background in Indonesia is also likely to have a really big effect on your likelihood of being poor and also your economic constraints. So I'm not going to go into all of that variation, but you need to understand that these ethnic, racial, geographical elements matter for households in terms of their opportunities. So I'm going to kind of dive into the challenges for women in small business. And actually, in the literature, the challenges for women in Indonesia are almost exactly the same as the challenges for women in the United States for starting business. And this is both at the very small micro level or more sort of, we call this sort of micro, small, medium, large. So in the small, medium category, women the world over have some of the same challenges. One is that compared to men, they're much more likely to start a business with much less money. And connected to that is they're less likely to get access to formal loans. And part of that is about discrimination. That is official and formal, where you have a banking sector that discriminates against women because they think that women don't deserve it, or they have their own views about what women should and shouldn't do. But in addition, there are sort of discriminatory structures built into the loan system. And so collateral means maybe Mbak Ika, how do you say collateral in Indonesian?
Collateral, we call it also collateral. Perhaps in a layman word, we can say the jaminan. What can make the bank sure that you are eligible and you have the capability to pay back the loan?
Yeah, so traditionally you would have some kind of asset like your house or maybe your car or your business that if you don't pay back the loan, the bank will take this asset back from you. But women are much more likely to not have any assets or to have very few assets. So the bank may not think that they have enough collateral. And then also they are much less likely to have a low income stream from the business that they're proposing or from the work that they're currently doing. And both of those things are sometimes the direct effect of, social norms about women as well. So, and in some parts of Indonesia and the rest of the world, really, but particularly Asia and Africa, in some places, women don't even have the legal right to own the land or to own some assets. And so those kind of things can have a big impact on women's ability to get a loan. And without a loan, almost nobody can open and run business. The other thing is for women, business networks really matter. Well, for everybody in business, they really matter. And women's business networks are just small. So it's really important to have people like Mbak Ika, generate networks. And I'm sure this may come up in discussion, how key these kind of networks are for everybody who wants to start a small business, both in terms of finding customers and making partnerships with other companies. And again, for a variety of social norms and discrimination, it's harder for women to find those things. And then lastly, and this comes out of research that I've linked in this PowerPoint in Indonesia, is that especially for very small businesses, women are much more likely to start businesses out of necessity rather than out of an opportunity where they're, sort of excited to see a new option and they have this product they want to get involved in. And it's much more likely to start a business out of necessity because they're more likely to get some money out of being a small business rather than working. And that makes things a little bit more precarious for them than otherwise. So we'll talk a little bit about why would you need to open a business? Why would you have that kind of choice? And basically, again, for this small business choice, and in a lot of cases by small business, what we're talking about is businesses that are run out of people's own homes sometimes, like, for example, sewing garments, but not that, which is a very stereotypical one, and which in the United States and in Europe, millions of women in the past, not so much in the present, but in the past, millions of women engaged in at-home micro business in sewing garments and textiles. And that is still the case in most of Asia, that there are millions of micro businesses in women's homes doing this kind of work. And you ask yourself, well, why is it better to have your tiny business rather than being a worker? And some of it is related to, can you get more income from working for someone or from running your own business? And so the questions are, what are the wages in the community? If you live in an area where the wages are quite low and the wages are not enough to support you and your family, then no matter what kind of jobs are available, but the wages are just too low, you might feel like it's better to start a little business than to try and get a work in your neighborhood. Is there a market for the thing I want to sell? So that's where networks matter, but it could also be like why garments can be a common product in this kind of environment, because if you live adjacent to or nearby a community where there are garment factories, a lot of times you can get connected to them in a very through their supply chain. And another question, is it better to be an employee or an employer, is are you going to get any healthcare or workplace safety? So women who are starting their own business are very unlikely to be able to get healthcare or protect themselves or their workers in case something happens. And there's some chance that if you go to work for a formal employer, you might be able to get those things. But if you're a community like in Indonesia, there's a lot of what's called social provisioning of healthcare that is not related to being at work, then maybe you don't have to make that choice. In the United States, everybody knows we have a very capitalist healthcare market. So in order for most people to get healthcare, they have to be working because they get their healthcare through their job. So you may end up being forced to take a job you don't want to because it provides you healthcare, because otherwise it is quite difficult to find healthcare in the United States. But most other countries in the global community, the government helps to provide healthcare for everybody. So these are just some of the kind of questions that people ask themselves when they're thinking about, is it better to be an employee or an employer? So I want to mention the extra double question that women have when they're making decisions about this. And that has to do with basically children and the elderly. And that care work and the social norms in most countries, this is not just an Indonesia phenomenon. In most countries, women are the primary carers, not care like everybody cares, but they're the primary workers in unpaid care work within the house. So whether it's and right now, I'm sure everybody knows that this is a really extra bind. The coronavirus and the shutdown and the closures of schools and childcare opportunities, they have really put extra pressure on women for their care work. But even when we're not in the middle of a global pandemic, these responsibilities have a huge impact on the decisions that women can make about what kind of work they're going to do. So where does work fit in? How can I do work if I have to take care of my 2-year-old? Or where can I work if I have to take care of my mom? Or where do I have to work if I have to take care of my husband's mom? These are real questions. Will my husband let me work? Because do we have some place? Is there a childcare center near me? And if there is a childcare center near me, am I going to make enough money to allow my family to allow me to go to work? So to give just an example, here in the United States, my sister, her husband, has a very strong opinion about whether she works. And every time she works, her husband makes her do the calculation, will you make enough money to justify putting the children in childcare? And it's a real negotiation. It's not really fair, but it happens all over the world. So this is a real thing. So for some women, in the absence of other opportunities for care work, they may find that actually having a small business in their house sort of is a kind of solution to this problem, because they can do the work, the care work, and then they can also do their business work in the same place. Again, it's not a great solution, but it can be a kind of a solution in the absence of other people or other care centers that might take care. Okay, so I just want to get to this contributing family worker situation and give you a sense of why I got on it. Some years ago, I was doing work on how did men and women, factory workers, due during the 2008 financial crisis. And I know the 2008 financial crisis seems like a very long time ago, and considering we're in another crisis, but it is a big area of study and concern and interest in Indonesia, in part because of questions about how is manufacturing doing in general, and is it a robust area, et cetera. But one of the things that I learned in reading about this had to do with the car sector, the automobile sector. So the automobile sector is a very, what we call male-intensive sector. Most workers in auto factories, whether it's for cars or auto parts, are men. And there's some new research that says that even in this like well-paid male-intensive sector, there was an increase in informality at the margins within this sector, where men were more likely to be called self-employed instead of employee, which seems really strange because you don't think of somebody like making a car in their living room or making auto parts in their living room as a self-employed auto worker. So it became something I started to look into a little bit more. And it is consistent with what we also know about sort of just deterioration in contracts at work. So sometimes the contracts at work are making it so that people are more likely to call themselves self-employed or working for yourself, when it just really has to do with the type of contract that the job gives you. So I just wanted to give you some insight into how I got onto this. But also here is just a picture for men and for women to show you about the changes in Indonesia in terms of the areas that men and women are likely to go into. So the blue represents agriculture, and the red represents manufacturing, and the green represents services, which is a really big category of economic activity. It can mean healthcare. It can also mean more in-house health help, like from pembantus, or it could mean like getting involved in food service or hospitality service or transportation service. And so you can see both for men and for women, there's just been an ongoing reduction in the number of people employed in agriculture. And but for manufacturing, it's been kind of steady for men and for women, not a big change. And services are the really big new growth area. So small businesses that deal with services are growing, and also small businesses dealing with manufacturing. But mostly we see this kind of trend where people all over Indonesia are doing less work in agriculture and more work in one of these other areas. And so we want to think about what kind of work is it? Is it informal? Are the contracts good? So when the contracts in auto work started to deteriorate for men, that's really kind of a bad sign of what kind of contracts you're going to get for women, because if they're bad for men, then they're likely to be much worse for women. So this is a general overall context. And so this concept of employment status is the idea of what kind of employee are you when you work at a company. And so to give you the overall perspective in Indonesia, these are the basic definitions of what employment status means in a formal sense. So this is from Indonesian data from the BPS, which is basically the center of data collection in Indonesia. And and this is just about people who call themselves workers or employees, workers. And you can see that for women, they're less likely to call themselves an official employee. men are more likely to call themselves an official employee. And in agriculture, we have casual employees in both areas, a little bit more for men. Casual employees not in agriculture, a little bit more for men. But then there's this category called unpaid workers. And what this means is that the way to read it is 47% of women who call themselves workers are unpaid workers. So a lot of people see that and they just don't, it just doesn't make sense. Why you're a worker and you're not getting paid for being a worker? So this brings us to this, and since it is such a large share of women workers, we want to think about like that really has a negative impact on the kind of choices that women have if their one option is to do so much contributing family worker work. So women make up the largest share of unpaid workers in small business, where their husbands and uncles and fathers compel them in some way to work without paying. So here's two kind of examples. One is in agriculture, and one up here is in Ratan, which is a manufacturing area, where you're much less likely to have male unpaid workers. And we want to remember that in addition to doing unpaid work in the family business, they're also doing all of the care work, or most of the care work. And also the data would suggest that women employers are more likely to pay women employees than male employers. So when you do have a woman who's your employer, or you're working for your aunt or your mom, you're much more likely to actually get paid than if you're working for your husband or your uncle. And here is a chart. You don't have to go through the whole thing, but just to give you some perspective on the prevalence and the importance of women's unpaid work in small business. So this gray column right here is telling us out of all of, I'm going to just take this one example of wood and wicker, of all of the workers in micro and small firms, 61% of them are unpaid women workers, which really tells you how important they are to the fundamental operation of that business. If they had to pay the workers, they had to pay those women workers, then it's likely that the business would just not even, would not make it. And there are many industries here, some that are not as stereotypical. So people often think of women as garment workers. So it's not that people are not usually that surprised, but still, again, what this means is for small and micro businesses in Indonesia, 70% of the workers are unpaid women workers. And even in paper and printing or chemicals and plastics, it is a very high dependence on unpaid women workers. Okay, so just the last question I want to leave you guys with is, so unpaid work for families probably further limits future options for young women, but it seems key to the success of the male-owned small business. So we can agree that it is probably not good for the women to do unpaid work and combined with the care work that they're responsible for doing. But on the other hand, what are some things that can be done to help those businesses be successful without depending on unpaid women workers? Like it's obviously suggestive of the bind that the business is in the first place. So I'll just wrap up that poor families from all over have difficult challenges about work and small business. Social norms about care work and marriage affect women's choices considerably. Running a small business can be better if the work opportunities around you are not good, but it's still precarious. And we want to keep in mind that our goal is to think about empowerment, being able to make some choices in your life that matter to you. And lastly, these are just some of the references for some of the points that I was making. So I think that's where I'll stop for here.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Shaianne. Eye-opening data, eye-opening insight that I would say that all of us here in the forum today now, I would say we are very privileged. Privileged in a way that we have access to this opportunity to gain knowledge, to this opportunity to have the insight and inspiration. What can we do to help other women? It gives me some shivering just to hear your explanation, how that a lot of work that is actually being contributed by women, it's not being considered as serious, it's not being considered as something that worth every single cent of rupiah or dollar, right? And it doesn't really matter whether it is in America or whether it is in Indonesia or any other part of the world, sadly. All right. Thanks a lot, Shaianne, for your insight. Let's get to Mbak Hannah. I think Mbak Hannah will have something also interesting in terms of the examples of the craft industry between production as well as challenges and opportunity that probably we as a society at large can empower better one into another. Mbak Hannah, silakan.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for Ad America for this opportunity. I mean, this is really important for us to do like this kind of sharing, so we can work together. I mean, as we see in Shaianne presentation, it's kind of something we need to working on together, right? So yeah, hopefully my presentation can add more something. This is kind of provocation, Baker. So yeah, let's see. Let me share my screen. So my background is product designer, and I work more into the, I have interest more into the craft, small scale industry, which is, for me in Indonesia, is kind of big potential. So the title might be a bit provocative, like designing the future of the craft woman. Like, what is the future we want to have for? This is more specifically to the craft, because for now our research is focusing on craft. Actually, our research, in my school, our research now is more into the future manufacturing. So we can see the trend, like we start to question, is that the mass production will still exist in the near future? Because as we see now people or market start to ask for more customized product. So maybe in the future or in the near future, even with the support of technology, then we might come back to the kind of form of small manufacture or so which can produce like more customized product. That's why we start to search back. See back to what is happened in craft. If we can see here, this is the craft made by. This is Indonesian craft made by women. So this is from the Citra. This is from the bag is from Aceh. The round ball is a shell. This is from Dekranasda. So, and there's the basketry is from Tasikmalaya, and the other one is from Dua Anyam, and we can see also the wood craft from Jepara. So all of those. Yes, so all of this product is made by women. So yeah, this is, we can see like how beauty is there. So yeah, we can see like how we never really see what is happen in the production of craft, but we can appreciate what is the outcome from that process. So here I would like to see this is a simple way of how we can see craft. There is a market. I mean, craft always, every product, I think, always try to meet what market needs, right? And then there is a business, of course, business bring product to the market. And what is the core of this business in craft, or maybe in all business is a production. The question is, so if we come back to the craft as a definition, like the traditional craft practice focuses in a local context and change slowly, respectively, to local ecosystem and community dynamic. So as we can see, maybe this is kind of like really different with what we know in the business, which is really fast, and maybe against the ecosystem, kind of. I mean, this like today's production. So this kind of thinking, we start to come back to like what is we can learn from the craft. So previously, the object of craft is always contextualized by the place where they made through the use of local natural materials, which is create intrinsic connection between the object makers, the users, and the local environment. So craft is we can understand craft as thinking through the interaction of hand and material. That's why you can see the result is really beautiful, because it's kind of interaction from the hands and material. I mean, they really understand what the material is. And there is also material exchange and share commitment in a community. So it's not about individual, but it's about commitment in the community, which also built a strong society with that craft production or craft activity. Craft making itself is physical and emotional experiences. Of course, we can read like that all, but I mean, this is the point. I think why it is important for us to see like production and learn from the craft. And in craft, we're paying attention. So what the world tells us, it's kind of because we work with the material and we work with peers. I mean, like in the community, we work with local material, which all of that actors like talk with us in the process of making craft. I mean, this kind of thing, maybe not really, we just do it. Sometimes we didn't really realize what we are doing. So we try to unfold it, what is happened in the process of making craft making. So therefore, the actions represents interconnectedness between the human actor, physical dimension, and its surrounding. So there's also a quote that making things for the craftsman often feels like telling stories. And as with all stories, we may pick up the threads and eventually cast it off. The thread itself but the thread itself have no discernible beginning or end. So, and if we see this is what's happened in the craft production, I sourcing this picture from Duanyam, Kabar Seputar Muria and Monitor Economy. We can see this is craft making is part of social activity, which we can see here. There's a gather, and sometimes they're doing the craft women working by chatting, by singing together, and they are taking care of kids too. And we can see here, this is kind of really familial setting. There is also a story. I mean, we did an interview with the designer who works with the community. Sometimes there's another problem. I mean, here we can see that women can work. I mean, like when they taking care of the kids, like Shaianne was mentioned, there's women have role to taking care of the kids. It was also the case that the kids come to the workshop waiting for his dad. But from the different perspective, they see this is kind of like child labor. So there's another different perspective where we can also consider between the what is values or what is the perspective from the mass production, consumption, manufacturing, or like different point of view with the worker in craft, which pretty much blend between working and socializing and doing daily activities, because craft is part of the daily activities. So there's another question that we can discuss later. So the question is, what is the goal of the craft making or the craft business? If the goal is like the market is global market, and we try to make a mass to fulfill the mass consumption, which means the production need to be mass production, which signified by the low cost, standardized product, and consistent quality. Which maybe this 3 points related pretty much with later, like as Shaianne mentioned about the unpaid women worker, because they need low cost, and the other challenge is like standardized product and consistent quality, which is the question is like, what is quality is? What quality is? I mean, in craft production is always challenge to make like consistent product because we use natural material. So how can, I mean, that's another challenge. When we see the craft from the perspective or of global market, mass consumption and mass production, we can see here the gap. So this is, I think this is not a choice, but we need to see more like how can we designing the future of craft by looking of this challenge or this gap. Because we can see here, like if we talk about the low cost, how can we put the where we can put the identity that can build the strong society? It's maybe like we just push like all the worker to the mass production without really do the process of thinking through the interaction of hands and material anymore. So this is what we start to want to see, like, so how we can designing the future of craft women, which I would like also I think this is also the maybe the alternative or the answer, what the goal we want to have. I take it from Mbak Shaianne. This is about dignified and equitable. So design is, this is from the perspective of design. Design is a transformation of existing condition to the preferred one. So the question is, what is the condition we prefer? I mean, what is the condition we want to have? I think, again, we need to, before we decide the condition we preferred one, like we need to see more detail about what we really need or what we really want. Then we need to design like all the systems by provoking, like, what if, so what is the goal if, like, what if our goal goes with the Ignatius idea? I mean, this is kind of like 1978, but I kind of really think like we never achieved this. I mean, this is like, the ideas have been there, but we never really work on it. Which saying that this is harmonizing social and economic objective with ecological sound management in the spirit of solidarity with the future generation. I mean, it's kind of like we never really work about that or with this idea. And we can see that craft have that already. So what if we put this as a goal by learning more about what craft already do? Of course, we need to do adjustment, which is like Shaianne already show us all the challenge. How can we work with all of this? Another say that, and this is about the interaction among three systems, like the biological. I cannot understand this resources system, the economic system, and social system. Which again we already see it we can see it in the craft production. And this is the what if and how if. Since the craft show us that everything happens in a community, I can see sometimes even now in craft production, which is we already put craft in the business now, like kind of confusion. This is craft, but we put that as sometimes we take out the root of the craft. I mean, we sell the craft, but we forgot about the root of the craft. So how if in the craft production or in the other production, in the small scale production, we can do like designing our future together, also with the worker, the employer, and the employee. Because in design, we kind of now it's not anymore like designer do things for client, but we gather the idea from everyone. So this is also the design approach where we can like participatory design. We bring all together to designing our future. I take this quote from the feminist STS theorists, scholars, that multi-possible future in process, democratically participative, giving voice to the marginal, which is for now maybe sometimes our worker, which is also female, like us, guided over time, but an evolving philosophical system. So we believe that we can be part of the philosophical system. I mean, as a woman, we can create our future. Thank you.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Mbak Hannah, for your presentation. I'm really touched by your approach of using the word itself as designing the future, because that means we are the one that have the control to what kind of future that we want that to be, right? As the word design itself is an aspiration, of the current situation that we have into the stage of condition that we aim to have in the future, right? And your last slide is actually very moving in a way that it shows no one can do this alone. It's a multi-possible future in process, needs some participation in a democratic way, some philosophical changing, and etc. Right? It takes a village. Someone say it takes a village to raise a child, but it's actually a global village to raise the child that we want for our future. Okay, thanks a lot, Mbak Hannah, for your presentation, as well as Cheyenne. And I think with that presentation, I believe that some of you, some of the participants here might have some questions. So everyone that is in Zoom, if you want to ask the question, you may raise your hand, and I encourage you to ask your question directly. Or other participants that watch us in other channels like Facebook or Instagram and YouTube, you may also put your questions. Anyone that want to start for asking the question directly? If not, I would like perhaps to start with a trigger question from myself. So I see that it actually, when we say about designing the future, when we say about women in SME business, there's a lot of things that can contribute, that contribute into the complexity of it. Where is the part of the man? Where is the part of our encounter, our brother, our husband, our parent, our father, uncle, and etc.? Where do you think it is? Because I think if we are only talking about the effort from the women only, right? I would say we are only halving of our potential to reach the better future that we want. But Cheyenne, perhaps you want to express your point of view on that. And then after that, I would like also to hear from Hannah, especially in the craft business or production.
Yes, this is a really great question, Ika. Thank you. And there's a lot of ways to put it, but one thing I would say is in the United States, we always used to have this thing called Take Your Child to Work Day, where you bring your kid, your daughter, take your daughter to work day. So to like raise their expectations and inspiration about what they can do when they grow up. Mm-hmm. But we don't have teach your son to babysit day.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. But since care work is it is not the only thing that limits women's options, but it is a huge part of what limits women's options. That is an issue about redistributing some of the work that goes with caring for family across the family. So if we start to make changes in the way that boys and men attend to taking care within the family, give more responsibility, raise the expectations for men in being good, attentive, caring brothers and fathers. Not that they're not good fathers, they're great fathers. But to the amount of time there are in every country, there are studies about the number of minutes and hours that women spend on care work. And it is always many more hours of the day. So I think I'm sorry?
And lesser paid, even not paid at all.
Yeah, either not paid but if we're even just talking about chores in the household, food, childcare, and elder care, are, that takes up so many hours of a woman's day. And if we can make shifts in the family where boys and men take on a little bit more responsibility and feel good about it because it's meaningful. Right. So it's not kind of like what Hannah was talking about. It's not just work. It's part of your life. So, raising your child and tending to your elderly mother or your mother-in-law are very, they're interacting in your heart, in your soul, right? So in a way, it's also increasing the ability for boys and men to feel that same kind of social connection, even within the household, and the impact that it can have on freeing up women's hours. Just literally a number of hours that women might have to themselves, to their future. And it's necessary because without redistribution of the care work, there's going to be sort of a cap, on time.
Okay.
And I will also say I was really moved by Hannah's comment about like when children are working and sitting with you, like it's, on some outside observer says, oh, that's like child labor made my basket, but it's part of the family project. But we want to think about it in these different dimensions. So,
okay, I like your point about distribution of responsibility in the household work because they can give the opportunity for freeing up some women's hours. It actually ours has no gender, ours has no sexes, right? But I think it's somehow we need to make that statement of freeing up women's hour because the world is sometimes being dictated by men's time. Okay, so a lot of participants here is actually the young people in their youth. So probably yang lagi nonton sekarang, right? Mungkin belum menikah, ada yang masih jomblo or everything. This is a good opportunity to have like what kind of spouse, what kind of pasangan hidup that you want for your future, right? Because I think sometimes people say that, oh, you're lucky you have a husband that wants to help you take care of the child or bantu you cuci piring. I don't think that's lucky. Cuci piring is, I mean, everyone is makan. Everyone is having their meals, right? And what is it so special being man is having to wash the dishes, for example, right? Thanks, Mbak Shaianne, on that. I see someone is, before going to Mbak Hannah, I see someone is on the video, want to pop some question directly? Is there? Nurmadia Fatah, raise hand. Okay. Nurmadia, let me, Panitia boleh minta di unmute untuk Nurmadia. Mbak Hannah, we will get to you, right? But let's hear the question from the Nurmadia first.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity tonight. I would ask to Mrs. Shaianne and Mrs. Hendriana in this forum, what was the impact of women entrepreneurship in the U.S. and our country, Indonesia, on social welfare and women's empowerment during COVID-19? That's all my question. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Interesting. COVID-19 in relation to that. Okay, I'll go to Mbak Hannah. I think the earlier question, you can also tie into this question in relation into the COVID-19 situation. Mbak Hannah, silakan.
Thank you for the question. I was checking like how many men in this forum, and it's quite, there is some people, so maybe we can ask them later. But I'm agree with Mbak Shaianne that in reality now, it's still kind of like women need to do this, like specifically for the caring. But I would like to provoke that let's challenge the man to think about that too. Like, and it needs not process, but again, maybe we need to develop our philosophical point of view again. Like caring is something really source of happiness, I think. And I cannot say that all like men didn't really think about that. Like some of the designer, which I interviewed as a man, and I was touched because they mentioned a lot about caring, like why they move to the village, for example. I mean, they was in the big city boy designer, and now they're working with they work like they moved to the village to be part of the community, and they really care about the worker, and they really care about woman worker. I mean, not even his wife, but like all the worker. And then there is also, I think the hope is there because again, there's a case that in the workshop they provide like all the Wi-Fi, and so again, maybe this is related with the COVID-19 challenge. The kids can be in the workshop doing their homework with the guidance of her or his dad, the dad, because the father is working there, and the workshop facilitate the kids also to being there, be close to the parents, or in this case, the father. So this kind of hope or new things, it's there, but we just never discuss about that. Okay. So I think this need to discuss more, and we ask the man like what you can contribute in this case.
Okay, so that big city worker moves closer to the village or to the community. Do you think it's a trend, or this is something that would last even after the COVID has passed?
No, I mean like they already moved before the COVID. so I think it's come from I hope it's a trend, but I don't know, maybe there's also from education. I mean like their family education, or from the peers. Like we can influence each other. I mean like right. I believe that the good things is always it's contagious. I mean, we can get inspired with everything. I mean, we just need to share the inspiration more.
Okay. But Cheyenne, do you have something to say about the impact specifically in the COVID-19 situation?
Yes, especially for small business in the United States and in Indonesia, it's been a very difficult time. And small businesses, run by men or run by women, they are always vulnerable to small changes in the economic context. And so in the United States and in Indonesia, there's real concern for I don't want to sound too dramatic, but there's real concern for like a complete collapse for small business, like maybe up to 50%, 25-30% of small businesses may have like when we get to some point where we have a little bit more clear data about Indonesia and the United States, it will show for most economists expect 20 to 30% small businesses will just not be able to make it. And women and minoritized owners. So in the United States, Black or Hispanic small business owners. And in Indonesia, outside of the big cities in the Eastern Islands or minoritized populations in urban areas. So like, Madaris, people who have moved to Jakarta, they're much more likely to suffer from this kind of business closure. And it's for the same reasons that women have faced in general, which is they're less likely to have access to networks and to loans. In Indonesia and in the United States, the governments have both put out, large assistance programs. But in both countries, sometimes that money doesn't make it to where it's supposed to be going. It's not just an Indonesia phenomenon in the United States too. Those small businesses often don't have the capacity to find where the money is from the government help. Right. It's hard for the government to find them unless they're already hooked up through formal networks and right. banking systems. So, and that's just, so women-owned business and like sort of racial minorities, they're likely to be hurt most. But overall, I think the small business world is in the more vulnerable position over this year. So yeah, shop at those places. Do your best to help them by changing your own spending habits and looking for the small companies so that you can help support them, especially food service.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a tips that I also share with some of my friends, right? During this COVID timing, we probably need to make conscious decision in our consumption. Like, for example, buying from the closest ibu-ibu sayur that's still trying to make a living from that. Yes, we have some choices probably to go to supermarket and stuff, which is not bad. But I agree with you, Shaianne. It's conscious decision for us to help one into another, right? Because we have that opportunity. And I think the one thing also that I underline from your statement is about the networking, right? So I realized that as a women entrepreneur itself, I have a small business that I run from my house, that I run together with my husband, actually, right? It is easier for somehow the man to get into the networking session, right? So that they have the opportunity to expand whatever it is into some skills upgrading, into some permodalan access, and etc., right? So when there is some movement about women business, it's somehow we get some, what do you call, pandangan miring, like why are you trying to be exclusive to women and stuff, right? Because small business can be for everyone. And I say, if it is really for everyone, then we won't have this conversation at first, right? So from that, I think the next question from Anggi Pasca Arnu. Thank you for your question, Anggi. What development methods are right for business for housewives? The question is actually quite tricky. Why do you need to state housewives specifically? Anggi, are you there in the Zoom? Maybe you can speak directly from your side. I would like to understand your thought process on this. What is it behind your question? Yes. Oh, Anggi sedang tidak bisa. Okay, it's okay. Okay, then Mbak Hannah, Mbak Shaianne, maybe you want to respond to this question. What development methods are right for the business for the housewives? Mbak Shaianne, you want to start?
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, there I think it sort of highlights the choice that I talk about in my presentation, which is that even though we would like women to not be solely responsible for the care work, nonetheless, a lot of women are. And so they need to figure out what are some ways to start a kind of a small business. And if they want to, I mean, again, perhaps it is better for them to find a paid job. But I think one of the first things, just like Ika was just talking about, is finding some network. Seeing if there are some other women in the neighborhood or the area that have already done it, so that you can get more information. And also sometimes if you can't get funding from the bank, sometimes the networks can, do some self-support that way as well. Obviously, it's important to figure out who is going to buy the thing that you sell, and whether it's food or craft, or you want to just get involved in another chain. So, like I was saying, like using garments as a very stereotypical example, like there are products that are connected to bigger markets, and there is home-based business opportunity for people to get involved in the supply chain in one particular way. This is what I think was going on, for example, in men's in auto parts, right? So there's so there can be some local economic activity that's going on that you could become a part of. That doesn't necessarily involve like having a little shop, but also, having a little shop. So I think the first thing that a woman who is at home, who needs to do their work from home, would need to do is to kind of network and talk to other people about what, but I also think that what they also need to try to do in their network is to try to expand the amount of time that they have available. And that means like somehow having conversations with men in the community about taking on some of the burden of care. And I know that that is very difficult at the individual household level. So that is also a reason why networks can help, especially in small communities.
All right. Thank you. Mbak Hannah?
Yeah, I might want to add something. I pretty much agree about the network. And if we can see here, if my tips is always, the first is like looking for something what you're really interested in, because I think business is long-term, like marathon. You cannot do like something like you don't love. So you need to start with something you really love or you're passionate about. And then I think now we can get inspiration for a lot of media, like join the At America or
yes, of course.
Facebook, Instagram. We can have inspiration, like what kind of like small. We can start with the small things that we love. Again, if business, then we talk about the market as Mbak says. So it's like someone will buy your things, like your product. So it's always important to see where's the market and what you love. Then you try to make a connection between that too. With the networks. I think that's I kind of simplified that, but maybe we can use it as a like the simple steps.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Mbak Hannah. Anggi, I hope that answer your questions, right? The kind of development, I think it's not only develop our skills and knowledge, but also develop our network for us to be able to enter the environment that we need for our business to grow. The next question is from Liam Liadi. Thank you. What is better between working on someone or some business first that we can get a lot of experience, or making a small business first so we can invite people for working together? Mbak Hana? Kerja dulu baru bisnis, bisnis dulu baru kerja.
I kind of have experience with that kind of thing. So when I just, I tried to start business before I work when I was at school. I mean, I study. Mm-hmm. It's triggered by, I mean, I'm product designer. I always want to try something. And my first business, baker, I made, I make a shoes for salsa dancers. You know, like wow. It was a time when the
interesting.
Yeah, it was the time when a lot of women go to the salsa class, yes. And the challenge is they cannot find the shoes that proper for that dance because they need to buy from Australia. So I kind of feel like, I can try it. Of course, I just only like really small, tiny money I have, but I know that again, I know I have connection. I mean, I know the craftsman who can make shoes in Bandung, right? Mm-hmm. So I try to develop the product and sell maybe only like 2 pairs for once because I have no production. I mean, like, I have no money for the production. So it's just like, but it grows like so fast. So it's kind of like, it depends. So the answer is depends. But right. If we not brave enough, but if we are sure that we can start something small, like jualan permen, like 2 permen dulu, and then, but we know someone will buy our permen, then it will grow. But if we still think that we need to learn or make networks, then we go with someone, and then we can maybe easier to get the networks or join the groups or like the Kranasda or maybe young people now have another group like start up something. I don't know, just being there, engaged, and then it should be like easier and with the networks. But of course, we cannot do it alone. That time I have the networks of the one who want the group who wants to buy my product, and I have the networks with the craftsmen. So the networks is important.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Anna. So you say that it doesn't really matter where you start, right? Yeah. As long as you can make the maximum out of it. But Cheyenne, probably I would like to ask you the same question with some emphasizing on the how can it benefit women to achieve at least closer into the pay gap? That all women experience all across the globe. It's $1 million question.
It's $1 million question. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple things. One, I would say, is, an individual woman by themselves that it's not going to fix some of the problems. So sometimes we call it networking. Sometimes we call it building community solidarity and engaging in activism around issues like this. But I would also say, and I know that this is difficult because it can be disappointing. But I think we also want to talk about our powers as people who vote. So, because some of the things that are barriers to women are things that, like in Indonesia, technically, and in the United States, technically, it is against the law to discriminate against women at work. So there's no legal basis for women to earn lower wages, right? However, we know that it happens all the time. And it needs to be a bigger piece of public conversation. And so when you are thinking about who are you going to vote for, you want to, I know in the United States and in Indonesia, sometimes people get sort of excited about candidates based on things that don't have to do with like their policies, like name recognition. Are they on Instagram? Like, how does their website look? Blah 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 blah. But when we start to actually try to hold the people that we vote for, we start asking them: do they care about women's rights? Do they care about small business? Do they care about worker rights? That's the only way they will start to care about those things. If we don't ask sort of those questions, if we don't look for those types of priorities, where then they're not going to start talking about them. So again, that's not something an individual person can do, but college students can get together and have a forum with, so university students, like let's say there's an election in your city, university students can have an event where candidates come and tell you about how they feel about different things. So then you ask them, what are you going to do for women-owned business? So we have to start asking the questions about discrimination and about care work in order to make progress about it. And you may not be able to fix it in your job by yourself. Although I will just say one more thing about that, which is that in general, both in Indonesia and in the United States, women are much less likely to ask for what they want. And that is because of social norms. It is not because women are weak. Women are not weak. They're strong and they work the hardest and the longest. But at the same time, when you take your first job, men ask for more money, always. 20-year-old, 22, 30, 50-year-old men always ask for more money. Maybe the boss says no, but they always ask. And women don't ask. So ask for what you want. Ask for a little bit more money. Ask for a little bit different work. Ask for help from your brother and your dad. And it makes a little bit of a difference.
Right. Okay, I totally second that. The courage to ask is something to start for. Let's make that as a part of our lives, as a part of our personality moving forward, right? Because I think it's somehow people tend to see if men are popping a lot of questions, they say that, oh, that guy is very active. That guy is really engaging. But when a woman is having the same kind of action, oh, that woman is so annoying. That woman is asking too much, right? So that kind of social judgment, right? I think it's somehow, it's wrong. And we need to change that. And I know it's not comfortable at first for us to get all those limelight directing to us, because we are asking a lot of questions. We are asking for some raise that we deserve. But if we think that we deserve that and we can substantiate that, just ask. Just ask. Yeah. Because I think when we ask, there's a possibility it will be denied. But if we don't ask, there's 100% possibility that we will not get that, right? If we ask, at least there's a 50% of possibility that it will be approved, right? Okay, so thanks, Leah Mulyadi, for your question. It's very interesting. If I can share a little bit experience from myself. So I tend to have whichever it is the route that you choose, it is okay. But first and foremost, I think the most important thing that we need to have in mind is the mindset, the mindset of being independent, entrepreneurial, no matter that we are working for someone or we are developing our own business, right? But it starts with the mindset. And the younger it is that we have, the better it is. No matter that life gets in way, probably we can continue to have a top-notch career in corporation, or we lead our own business, or we lead our own household, right? So like Anggi is saying about that housewives, the business for housewives, right? Okay, so it actually I have something to say. Let's not talk about only housewives, but also maybe house takers, right? Our households needs to be taken care of, not only by the wife, but also by the husband. So let's start to change that from the very simple word that we have in our head. So I would like to encourage us all here. Perhaps we can call that moving forward as a house taker, not only housewives, right? Because the husband is also having equal responsibility to taking care of the household. Okay, I think we have another question. Angelina Maxis, yeah, you raise your hand. Angelina, are you there? Yes.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for Ms. Shane and Ms. Hannah for the presentations. My question is actually not because of the woman role and stuff. I'm really into Ms. Hannah's presentation about the crafting. So maybe it's for Ms. Hannah. My question is based on my experience. I have a mom who is really into the crafting. So she sold couple of her crafts, but sadly the society seems unsupportive because they seems like they are underestimating the meaning of crafts because they prefer more to a things that is more practical and offer an affordable price rather than craft which needs a dedication for the making. So this is why this situation makes my mom it's really hard for finding the funding help from the local government because the local government thinks there is an uncertainty for the long term of a business, and also they think because there's only a few income that comes from her business. So my question is, as a person who have an experience in the craft, what should we do to grab the society's attention for introducing our meaning of craft? Because it's really hard, even if we tried several strategies from the social media or stuff, because it's already into their mindset that they think practical things is more beneficial rather than a piece of craft. I think that's my question.
Okay,
right.
Thank you for the question. So yeah, craft is a process. which we can see that as like hand and soul, and like something we really do it with our heart. But then craft is always have function, kind of like in the traditional craft, they make craft not as something beautiful, but for the chicken lay their eggs. So it's always have like functionality itself. So and always, of course, for any functionality is always a market for that. Like we cannot see craft only as a beautiful handwork, but also where we can see that craft will be. So it's kind of a specific question. I mean, for my point of view as product designer, but of course, Angela can reach me, like just send me email so we can discuss more detail about, because it's, it depends on what kind of product, what kind of craft, what kind of material, what kind of design you make, your mom makes. So yeah. And then again, maybe networks can help. Like maybe there's another craftsman who worked with same material, or so they can share the market, share the techniques, share the ideas. So it's always nice to have community, because basically craft is like community activity. It's not art, like art piece. Sometimes people cannot see the difference between the craft and the art piece. So craftsman doesn't sell art piece. So art is just up to you, but the craft is not up to you. It's up to many things. Yeah. So Angela, if you still need something more detailed, just reach me. Okay. Thank you. So that's the question.
Wow, interesting. I just know it's somehow intercross between craft and art, right? Mm-hmm. But you say that art is very subjective, while for craft, it needs to have some certain functionality so that it can attract a certain market for whatever function it is that is relevant for the market that we targeted. Thank you for that insight. I think it's interesting, because somehow not all, but many crafters coming from the traditional background, right? Like you give example the basket anyaman from Tasikmalaya and etc. Right? It has been around like for centuries traditionally, right? But when we want to make it bigger and enter like aspirationally the global market, it can no longer stay only in a traditional management, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's interesting. So Angelina, thanks for your question, and Mbak Hannah is openly accept if you want to have a further discussion on that. As well as also, I think that Shaianne is also giving the opportunity if we want to reach her out, right, for a further question or discussion. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the discussion that we have today. I have a lot of insight, I gain new knowledge, and also great networking with all of the people here to understand what is it that we have in the field, what is really happening, as well as a comparison or benchmark with that. It actually, this kind of challenges is not only something that we experience in Indonesia. It's even a country as big as America is also experiencing some similar, if not the same kind of challenges or problems that we have here. So I'm still going to open. I think we, Panitia, we still can have one more questions, right? Before we end the session. Okay. While waiting for that, for anyone to pop another questions, I would like to ask Mbak Hannah as well as Mbak Cheyenne in terms of how can we convey this awareness to the next generation? Because lately I read some report, some news that due to the pandemic situation, the road for equality that we want to have for men and women to achieve that, the COVID-19 situation makes us about step back 20, 30 years. So with the importance of having an equal opportunity for men and women, how can we continue these values to convey to the next generation? Start from Hannah first, and then I would like also Mbak Cheyenne to answer that.
Yeah, that's really tough question. But what I can say, maybe like first we start like the easiest. I mean, reachable part is like from ourselves. Sometimes I can see my women friends still see themselves in that position. Like maybe one of the things is don't want to speak up, and maybe her mindset is still in that position. Like start with ourselves, and then start with. We can always show ourselves, our thinking to our friend around, and don't think about the challenge first. Just be
jalan aja gitu ya.
Like this is like jadi bukan pikiran, tapi it's our personality that I'm equal. I am equal. So what's your problem? Start with that, and then if we are a mom, of course we need to show that to our kids. I mean, if our spouse kind of challenging, but we just show the as a role model. We can always be a role model for our society. Of course, it need to be like one in the word in our behavior, right? And then like the other, it's kind of challenging. Maybe also like it's step by step. And I can see this like, and of course we need to be close to each other, like the other women who have similar thought. It can it's strengthening us, right? We cannot be alone. Yeah, then for me it's the start, and maybe Mbak Cheyenne can continue with the bigger, broader context.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Hannah. Speak up. Have a bold personality that start from ourselves. We are equal, and pick the environment that support our values. That's what I take from your statement, from your explanation. But Cheyenne, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And also sort of some of the things I was mentioning before about how it's very difficult at the individual level, but finding like this idea, I like the way that it was worded, that like find the environment that will help you feel empowered. And so it's a little bit, it may not be the one that you are in. So you have to kind of keep your eyes open for other people. The other thing, I know this sounds small, but volunteering in community service opens your mind and worldview to other communities that you didn't know. They're not part of your high school, they're not part of your college experience, but they can give you other people to visit with and to maybe be inspired by. But ultimately, these things have to happen sort of at the collective level. And so what that means is, getting together with like-minded people. Individual decisions that you can make, honestly, is both for women in particular is, and I know this doesn't sound very romantic, but to deprioritize getting married.
Okay.
At least in, there's a lot of social, it happens in the United States too, although nowadays the age is a little bit later than it is in Indonesia. But, issues if there are a lot of issues in Indonesia that get created around the project of getting married. And once you get married, a lot of times opportunities become closed off because then your formal responsibilities for care work start. So delaying getting married is actually an individual action, and it has some effect. It's not always socially easy. Obviously, people are, they have true love and it's real, but at the same time, your life is real and matters, and your future and the other parts of your life matter as well. And I think this is true for men and for women. I think both men and women feel obligated to try and sort out getting married quickly. And it's a huge burden for men. Yes. Young men feel it is not. We've been talking a lot about the burdens for young women and women in general, but the burden to find and to take care of women is also a big burden. And then we also have, communities outside of the standard heterosexual marriage. Right. And we want to also understand that these communities are people who have taken strong steps in their lives because they are themselves sort of taking a step outside of what is usually considered like expected and normal. So you can actually find inspiration sometimes, I think, in widening your social circle to include people who are just making some steps outside of what the community expects from them, whether it's delaying getting married, or so I those are some individual steps that I think we can be making in addition to trying to be collective.
All right. Thanks, Cheyenne. So for all of you young people here, probably you need to be having some thick skin, agak tebal muka sedikit kalau ditanya kapan nikah, right? Especially after this Lebaran, or maybe on the some family occasion, right? This kind of thing, right? Like Indonesia called basa-basi, right? Kapan nikah, after nikah, and then kapan punya anak, after punya anak, and then kapan kasih adik, etc., etc. It's like there's no end to it, right? What people don't realize is sometimes they think, especially I think this is somehow in the rural society, that marriage seems to be thought as a way out from the current problem that a family have, for example, poverty. But it actually can be a start to a bigger problem when both parties are not ready. It could become another start of a problem for the women. It can also be another problem for the men because of the burden to support the family, etc. And also, I think not only for you that yang masih muda, I think you have the choice to say, you want to get married when you are ready to get married. And also some of you that has already been married, there's also some social pressure like you're a single parent, right? So I think to be able to stand on our own, start from our mindset and pick the environment and somehow allocate our energy for doing some volunteering, that can be something that can help us not only as a person, but for a society at large, and how we can convey that positive value for the next generation. All right, I think we have come to the end of our session. Thanks for all the participants. Thanks for Mbak Cheyenne. Thanks also for Mbak Hannah and for all the panitia from at America. This has been a very lovely and enlightening opportunity for me to guide this discussion. This is very, I think the discussion is very fruitful, and I hope that it will also be impactful for us on a personal level and also on a bigger level. So by this, once again, thank you very much, and hope that our discussion this evening can have something that you can take from this. Mbak Cheyenne, Mbak Hannah, thank you very much. And by this, I return the session back to our e-guide on duty. Kak Maya.
All right, thank you so much, Mbak Ika and the rest of our speakers. Now, before we close our event, I would like to invite Bapak Raji Singh, Deputy Econ Counselor in the U.S. Embassy Jakarta, to say a few words.
Selamat malam semuanya. Thank you for this excellent session. It was very interesting and exciting to hear about all the women entrepreneur ideas that Hendriana Werdhaningsih, Shaianne Osterreich, and Ike Hamdan were discussing. We talk about empowering women in the economy as a key goal, a key United Nations goal as part of the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. But that's really at a high level. What this discussion did was bring it down to a very practical level, because when more women work, when more women are involved in the economy, economies grow. So it was very interesting to hear about very practical advice on what women can do to start their own businesses, perhaps starting at a small scale. As they say, during these pandemic times, there's a common phrase we use: necessity is the mother of invention. So entrepreneurship has actually increased during the pandemic. So there are always opportunities, including in difficult times. And so I'd like to thank the speakers again and our moderator, Ike Hamdan, for carrying on this really interesting discussion. They discussed the importance of networks. That was emphasized again and again. Support networks that help you build your business and take your ideas forward. They also talked about a cultural change. There's an element of cultural change that perhaps is longer term, about changing mindsets that women alone are not, shouldn't simply be caregivers, but that it should be a shared opportunity. They also emphasize the importance of picking your role models and modeling behavior yourself that you think you'd like to see in the world. And then finally, they noted, ask for what you want. That's important. Ask for what you want. And they also had a last bit of advice for consumers like me, which is think consciously about how you spend your rupiah. So a lot of very good practical advice. And I'd like to close the evening and the session by once again thanking Bu Hendriana Werdhaningsih and Shaianne Osterreich as our speakers, and Ike Hamdan as our moderator. For the U.S. Embassy, thank you to all our participants for spending your evening with us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Bapak Raji Singh, for the remarks. And now, the rest of you, please don't go anywhere because I have the name of the winner for our social media quiz today. Earlier in this event, I asked you guys, is it true or false that Virginia Rometty was the first female CEO to head the IBM? And the correct answer is true. Virginia Ginny Rometty is an electrical engineer, entrepreneur, and the first female CEO of IBM. And our winner for today is, congratulations, Denisa Rizkia Suardi from Facebook. Congratulations. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this event, America is having a very special activities and we're giving out a treat for a feast. And how do you participate? You can participate by posting a picture of you with your family or friends to your social media account. Use the hashtag #MayWe on the caption. And don't forget to tag our social media account at ATAmerica. For further information, you can visit atam.tv/MayWe. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? Easy. You can go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, click Create an Event, and collaborate with us. All proposals coming to us will be reviewed, and your event might be featured here soon. And while you're on our website, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletters for weekly event updates sent straight to your inbox. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at ATAmerica for event updates, fun content, and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Happy weekend!